Welcome to Chat About Movies. I'm your host, Tegan. This is about chatting about movies that we may or may not like, what we think about them, and what we think might have gone better, or how we think of them as rebooted or impossible crossovers, or the possibility of seeing them in real life. So, buckle up and we'll see how we go. Today we're going to be talking about our favorite characters. So, Aaron, would you like to tell us what your favorite character is?
Ooh, it's hard to choose. There's so many of them. I'd have to go with Baby out of Dirty Dancing.
Oh, what do you like about it?
Love that she has a goal and she'll do anything to achieve it, but she has a way of backing up people who are in trouble, or she assists them with aid at the first blink of it. She goes and gets her dad, or she helps them out in some way.
Hmm. What is it that you admire about her?
I just love that she has, at the beginning, she's not allowed to have a voice, but she somehow finds that voice for herself and Johnny. And she convinced him that he is allowed to have a voice. He's allowed to express himself, and he's allowed to have an opinion.
What would you consider as a possible negative?
The fact that her father doesn't listen, doesn't listen to her, and uh, she, when she helps somebody out and it costs her dad money, but it was actually illegal. And instead of allowing her to explain, the father just cuts her off and doesn't speak to her, or is nice to her for the rest of their trip up at the resort, if you like.
Hmm. Well, thank you for that, Aaron. So let's
Thank
see.
you.
Now let's see. Ryan, would you like to tell us what your favorite character is?
Sure, would be glad to. I think my favorite character of today, at least, is the Marvel Comics character Deadpool.
That's certainly an interesting choice. What is
Yeah.
it that you like about Deadpool?
Uh, well, I think because of how non-linear he is. He seems to jump on both sides of the coin by being an anti-hero or a good guy at times, and he seems to do things that serve his own interests or help bad people and helping good people at different times. And it's very freeing to see. Um, Also really funny as well. Sense of humor that's too powerful to match.
What do you think about his character?
I didn't think too much of him at first. He seemed kind of like a bonus read. I was introduced to the character about 15 years ago while playing a video game, and then I got really interested and I started learning more about him. Um, Even to some extent, Wolverine is a favorite character as well. They both kind of exist in the same universe with the same facets of story. Um, but yeah, I thought there was something very unique about Deadpool, and that's there was something very interesting as well. And then obviously something different came along with the Ryan Reynolds movies that started up a few years ago. That were really obviously live action formats and very kind of uh, non-friendly in some aspects. It's not for a wide audience, but it is really very, very accurately based on the character. Um, So as a comic book fan, I did really take to that whole kind of working with much enthusiasm.
What would you consider as a negative?
Oh, probably that he's too funny sometimes would be to be the best the best possible no that I can put together about the character. But otherwise, yeah, really funny. So always good for a laugh. It's a bit hard to say, but um, being over the top sometimes would probably be what I don't like too much about it, even though I don't find it much of a problem if it's appropriate for his character.
How would you best describe your favorite character with his unique ability?
Uh, like a cockroach that keeps crawling back up a toilet after you flush it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's only one term that I can think of that applies.
So if he were to choose a side, if he does, which side do you think that would be?
I think he would still want to save the world purely for self indulgence and being looked on as someone who does things better than anyone else. He always seems to think he's awesome and he's very self proud. I don't think it's a bad quality at all. So, yeah,
Well, thank you for that. We'll go for the next person.
sure.
Seb, would you like to tell us your favorite character?
Oh, sure. I don't know if this is my favorite character, but I was just thinking about, I was thinking about the characters in The Big Lebowski. And that I kind of like, for example, The Big Lebowski, he's just sort of a bit of a loser, and it's kind of nice to have a character who's just like very easygoing and just, it's just funny.
How would you best describe this character?
I would say he's a bit of a hippie. He doesn't have much ambition. And I think one of the funny things about him is that he kind of gets influenced by his friends over the course of the movie. So he doesn't he sort of does stuff that might not be in his best interests because, somebody else has influenced him too. And then he sort of makes mistakes and, just gets himself in bad situations.
So, what would you consider as a negative?
Well, I would say his lack of ambition is not good, but it makes for a very comedic character. And I guess he kind of has a bit of a temper as well at some point when he finally gets fed up with these crazy situations that he finds himself in.
Do you consider him as an ideal character?
No. No, but he's like a character that's sort of enjoyable and fun to watch because he's so flawed.
What's the one thing would you think will make him better?
I like that he's very flawed because it makes him more interesting and three-dimensional. I think sometimes when characters are too perfect or too good, they're not as interesting. So I think having someone who kind of is a little bit rubbish is fun to watch.
Okay, thank you for that, Seb.
Thanks, Tegan.
David, would you like to tell us what your favorite character is?
Yeah, my favorite character is
Got so many. I strongly still have to say Forrest Gump. Just in the way that he's like still carries on with life, with what happens around him, and also his love and dedication for a woman.
Do you like his personality?
I do like a lot of his personality. His personality for me is something that's quite strong, simple. Like a lot of his thinking. Like whenever he wants to get rid of stuff, he would go out for a run. Whenever he would get things off his mind, he would do things like play ping pong, and also the fact that he's thinking of actually saving people in a war, to actually having being dedicated to actually having a shrinking business. I mean, there are lots of dedications, lots of characteristics in that that I do enjoy a lot, really. So yeah.
So what would you consider as a negative?
Oh, it's a good one. Negative. One possible negative would be be interesting to see somebody I absolutely Tom Hanks is like one of my favorite actors. But it'd be interesting to see a different character, a different actor playing the character, whether it's somebody that actually has the same thinking, or even the same disability that he would have. I mean, I think, don't get me wrong, I think Tom Hanks did a brilliant job in it. Pretty amazing. I personally don't think that I'll find a lot of negative stuff.
Well, we're getting a little pressed for time, so I might have to stop the questions there.
Thank you.
Okay, Joanna, would you like to tell us what your favorite character is?
Oh, hi. My favorite character. I recently watched a film called Florida Project, and there was this character called Mooney, and she is I think, 6-year-old or 7-year-old child. And she lives in kind of like a not so good home situation, low socioeconomic kind of background. And her single mother is just trying to make ends meet through some really like challenging jobs, and it just shows how resilient children are. And this girl, Mooney, this little 7-year-old child, she's so unapologetic and funny, and she gets up to a lot of mischief with her friends, and it's just very playful. And it's one of my favorite films recently, and such a brilliant, strong female character.
How would you best describe your character?
Well, she's very cheeky, and she gets up to a lot of mischief, and she has a bit of a potty mouth, but she's also just like very loving and incredibly emotionally intelligent and active and really proactive, and just sort of a really she's just a kid, I suppose, just doing what kids do and having a really wonderful imagination.
What would you consider as a negative?
Kids shouldn't play with fire. So in one of the scenes, they accidentally made a fire in a abandoned home, and then they burnt down the entire home and I think surrounding homes that were also abandoned. And so that happened. So I'd say getting in too much mischief sometimes, and getting in too much trouble. But you're a kid, so you learn through experience and curiosity.
Would you consider as an ideal character?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I would, yes. Yes, I would, because I think she's so her character is so interesting and lovable and just hilarious and spontaneous. The character is, yeah, she's just like a really wonderful, refreshing character that you just fall in love with. And I think that is, yeah, I'd say she's like an ideal hero. I think, you know, she's like, you're rooting for her the whole time, and you're feeling, you know, you want the best for her. So I would say she's totally an ideal hero. Yeah. And also she cares a lot about her friends, and she's willing to, you know, take risks just to, you know, connect with her friends and loved ones. And she's really unafraid of things. So I think she's really inspiring character as well.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we got time for now.
Thanks, Tegan.
There you go.
And that's all we got for Chat About Movies. Hope this was insightful and hope to see you next time.